My parents used my inheritance to buy my sister a car. Grandma made one call from hospice. The morning sunlight spilled across the kitchen table like nothing in the world was wrong, but my chest felt hollow, as if something precious had been quietly stolen while everyone else slept. I stared at my phone, rereading the bank alert that confirmed what my heart already knew. The inheritance my grandmother had promised me, the money she saved penny by penny for my education and first real step into adulthood, was gone. Spent. Not misplaced. Not delayed. Gone. And the sound of a car engine revving happily outside sealed the truth before anyone said a word. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and quiet justice that arrives when it is most needed, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Kindness Journal. Stories like this remind us that even when things seem unfair, compassion still finds a way. My name is Rowan, and I grew up learning how to be invisible. I was the older child, the responsible one, the helper who never caused trouble. My sister Maribel, on the other hand, was light and noise and constant motion. She was adored for it. I learned early that love in our house was loud for some and silent for others. Still, I believed in promises, especially when they came from my grandmother, Evelyn Hale, a woman who smelled of lavender and sunshine and always held my hands as if they mattered. Grandma Evelyn raised me in ways my parents never noticed. She noticed my report cards left quietly on the counter, my early morning job before school, my dreams of studying environmental design and building things that lasted. On warm daytime afternoons, she would sit with me on the porch, watching birds argue over crumbs, and tell me that doing the right thing quietly was still doing the right thing. She promised that when the time came, she had set something aside for me, something to help me start my life without fear. I never asked how much. I trusted her more than numbers. When Grandma entered hospice care, the world felt like it tilted slightly off its axis. The house grew quieter during the day, as if even the sunlight was careful not to disturb her. I visited every afternoon, bringing fresh flowers and reading to her while the nurses checked machines that hummed softly. She was weaker, but her eyes were sharp, still full of intention. She squeezed my hand and reminded me that kindness did not mean allowing yourself to be erased. A week later, my parents called a family meeting in the middle of a bright Saturday morning. The kind of morning where birds were loud and everything felt deceptively normal. They spoke carefully, using words like necessity and family priorities. They explained that Maribel needed reliable transportation for her new job and social life, that the old car was embarrassing, that it was a good investment. They said the inheritance money was technically family money until paperwork was finalized. They said I would understand because I was mature. I nodded because that was what I had been trained to do. I nodded while something inside me cracked. Outside, the new car gleamed in the sunlight, blue and perfect, a ribbon still tied to the mirror. Maribel laughed and hugged my parents, her joy filling the driveway. I stood in the shadow of the doorway, invisible again, wondering how a promise could disappear so easily. The days that followed were heavy but bright, the kind of daytime hours that felt wrong for grief. I went to work, studied in the afternoons, and visited Grandma every day. I did not tell her what happened. I told myself it would only upset her, that she had enough to carry. But she noticed anyway. She always did. She saw the way I hesitated, the way my smile didn't reach my eyes. She asked gentle questions, and I gave careful half-answers. One afternoon, sunlight streamed through the hospice window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Grandma asked me to open the blinds wider. She wanted to see the trees. Her voice was thin but firm. She held my hand and asked me, not unkindly, whether the money was safe. The question landed softly but hit hard. I tried to deflect, but she squeezed my fingers with surprising strength. The truth spilled out, quiet and ashamed, as if it were my fault. Grandma closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them, there was no anger, only clarity. She told me that love did not excuse betrayal, and that being family did not mean being entitled to someone else's future. She asked for the nurse to bring her phone. I thought she wanted to call a friend. I did not realize that one call, made in the middle of an ordinary afternoon, would change everything. The call was brief. Grandma spoke calmly, asking for confirmation, stating facts, invoking documents and names I did not recognize. She thanked the person on the other end and handed the phone back. Then she rested, the sunlight warming her face, as if her work was done. I sat there confused, my heart racing, unsure whether to feel hope or fear. 2 days later, my parents received a call of their own. I was at home, the house filled with daytime light, when their voices rose in the living room. Not shouting, but sharp with surprise and discomfort. I stayed in my room, listening to the murmur of consequences unfolding. Later, they told me that Grandma had placed the inheritance in a protected trust long ago, one that could not legally be used for anything other than my education and living expenses. The money they took had triggered an automatic review. The car dealership had been contacted. The funds were being returned. The trust would be administered by a third party. The car was gone by sunset. The driveway looked empty in a way that felt symbolic. Maribel cried and accused everyone of betrayal. My parents were quiet, confronted for the first time with the cost of their choices. No one yelled at me. No one apologized either. But something had shifted. The silence was different. When I visited Grandma again, she was weaker but peaceful. She smiled when she saw me, her eyes reflecting the afternoon sky. She told me that fairness was not cruelty, and that protecting someone's future was an act of love, even when it upset the present. She said she was proud of me, not for the money, but for surviving kindness without becoming bitter. I held her hand until the light changed and the room grew soft. Grandma passed a few days later, in the early afternoon, with sunlight on her pillow and birds outside the window. The world did not stop, but it slowed. At the service, people spoke about her strength, her generosity, her quiet way of setting things right. I understood then that her final gift was not just financial. It was a lesson written into my life. The trust allowed me to enroll in my program without loans. I moved into a small apartment filled with daylight and plants on the windowsill. I worked part-time and studied hard, building a future that felt earned and protected. My relationship with my parents remained complicated, cautious but honest. Maribel learned, slowly, that attention could not replace accountability. Sometimes, in the middle of a bright afternoon, I think about that phone call from hospice. About how one woman, nearing the end of her life, chose clarity over comfort, fairness over avoidance. She did not raise her voice. She did not shame anyone. She simply made sure a promise was kept. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness can be firm and love can draw boundaries, please take a moment to like, share, and engage with this video. Your support helps stories like this reach others who need them. And before this story ends, I have a special request for you. Please comment below with the name of someone who taught you a quiet lesson about fairness or kindness. Let us honor them together. The sunlight still finds me most days. In classrooms, on sidewalks, through open windows. And when it does, I remember my grandmother's hands, steady and warm, guiding me forward even after she was gone.